Today, we're going to be tackling the FIRE movement, what it is and what we think about it. Hi, I'm Joseph.
And I'm Tasha with One Big Happy Life, and we help you find balance, build wealth, and live happy. Everything that you need to create the life that you want. So today, we're going to be talking about the FIRE movement, and it's something that we've been talking to each other about talking about. But what prompted this video was last week on Instagram, I did an Ask Me Anything. And if you're not following us on Instagram, it's at One Big Happy Life. And we got a question about, well, what do you guys think about the FIRE movement? So I said, hey, let's scrap whatever video we were going to do today and do this instead, because we've been meaning to anyway.
Now, before we get into it, there are a couple of disclaimers because we feel like this video is probably going to catch some pretty strong opinions.
It's going to catch fire.
But so with any major personal finance topic, you cannot cover it in a 10 to 15 minute video or 20, however long this one ends up being. It is still just too short because there's too much nuance and, room for a lot of discussion. So, take this video knowing that we cannot possibly cover every question or concern or objection, information point. We're just going to try to tackle a good portion.
And then secondly, also, remember that there is no one right way to live a good life, and that each of us can make decisions that are in alignment with what feels good to us without calling into question whether or not those different choices are right for other people. So we're going to be talking about some general considerations about the FIRE movement. And then we're also going to be talking about applying the FIRE movement specifically to us and our thoughts on it for our life together. So disclaimer, that was a long enough disclaimer. Let's just get into it.
Okay. The FIRE movement, it's an acronym. It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. So essentially what this is somebody who has enough money invested to live off of the passive income from that nest egg for the rest of their lives without having to do anything else. And that allows them to retire early. And so the goal is to get this nest egg as soon as you can to retire as early as possible. And then just, live on the income for a really long time.
So there are different veins of the FIRE movement. There's straight FIRE, right? And then there's lean FIRE, which is so straight FIRE tends to be pretty frugal with a very high savings rate because like Joseph mentioned, the goal is to amass that nest egg typically as quickly as possible so that you can retire very, very early. So for some people, their 20s, their 30s, their 40s. Some people might even consider it 50s to be FIRE because traditional retirement is in their 60s. But generally, you get there by having a very high savings rate and living off of a very small portion of your income. And so then there's lean FIRE, which typically will be FIRE that's like under $1 million. So you're living even leaner than your typical FIRE person, which tends to start at 1 million, though it's really 25% of 25 times your living expenses. And then there's fat FIRE for the people who want to live more luxuriously in their early retirement.
Now, are we in the FIRE movement? We are not in the FIRE movement.
Not technically. So we have good incomes between the two of us, Joseph's employment income and then my self-employment income. And so we've always kept a minimum savings rate that would put us at hitting our first million by the time Joseph turns 40, I'll be 43. And so that's still kind of a longer timeline for FIRE because a lot of people tend to look at it at like 10 years. And for us, that's going to be more like 15 years to our first million. And once upon a time, we were thinking, maybe we would just stop at $1 million. But we've since discovered that we enjoy spending more than just $30,000 a year. And there are a lot of things that we want to do in our lives. So we're not just going to stop at $1 million. In fact, we plan on retiring at traditional retirement age with an 8-figure nest egg.
Yeah, and that's largely because we also intend to keep working generally. That it's not that we anticipated just stopping all work altogether, and because we knew that we were going to keep working, well, it doesn't make sense to then, aggressively save, where you just have a whole bunch of extra money when you know you're still going to be working and you have that income that you can rely on. And so that's another, like, it kind of violates the whole rules that if you keep working, then you're not really retired, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, and so that's probably the biggest thing that people kind of complain about when it comes to the fire movement is that the people that represent the fire movement, yes, they have saved enough to reach financial independence, but they didn't actually retire because they're still running their own businesses. And yes, they're doing it 100% on their own terms, and they could stop working if they want to. So I think, it's that I would consider it to be a sort of misconception. As long as they have enough money that they can retire if they want to, even if they choose not to, I think you've reached fire. You don't have to point fingers at them for that. But I also wish that there was more conversation around the fact that they are still making solid money, even though they've retired. And they tend not to do that. All they tend to say, if you look in the fire media, they just say, oh, I'm doing this because it's fun. And I'm like, there are a lot of things that are fun. You're doing this because you enjoy making money. Like, let's just be honest. If you just wanted to pay it forward, then you'd be donating all the proceeds that you're making to other causes, but you're not. You're pocketing some or all of that money. So I think there could stand to be more transparency within the fire community. And I've seen several people actually say, like, let's have a transparency page in the fire community. Every person who is about fire should have that so that people understand what's really going on behind the scenes with them and in their business and how they're making money.
Yeah, I mean, we've been really open with kind of how our business has been going, and we think I mean, that's just really important as like a cultural aspect of the more information you have, the better decisions that you can make, and you don't need to be secretive about finances. So, like, I'm really on board with that too.
So, in terms of how we feel about the fire movement, so we're different people, so we have different opinions. So we'll each talk about how we feel about it. And so I'll just start by saying that I think that it can be great, right? It just depends on what works for you in your own life. And each person needs to be free to decide that. And so to that end, though, the thing that I do not like about the fire movement is that when you read a lot of the literature, especially if you look at some of the biggest players out there, for example, like Mr. Money Mustache, you'll see that the way that he talks about people who choose differently is very judgmental. It's very shame based. It's very othering. And I don't think that it's necessary for you to try to make the other group seem bad or those other decisions as less desirable in order to say that what you are doing is good.
Yeah, so my first point about it is that it is definitely not for everybody. And so while there are the people that are promoting the fire movement that are kind of almost looking down on people who want to just go ahead and keep working and have careers, I mean, I think, personal finance is about taking the values and goals that you have for your life and then, designing your finances around it. And, if you want to retire early, then excellent. The fire movement might be exactly what you need to be doing and want to be doing to be able to get to that. But a lot of people, it's not that they want to not work, it's that they don't want to work at what they're currently doing.
Yeah.
And so the disconnect is from what they're actively doing in their current career to what they ultimately wish they were doing. And that's just changing jobs.
Yes.
That's not retiring early. That's figuring out what drives you and then going and doing that in a way that you can then sustain your life and your life goals.
Yeah, it's really problematic that it's like people hate their jobs, so retire equals retire early. But really, people hate their jobs could also equal find a job that you're passionate about, that pays you what you're worth, that you enjoy doing, that makes you feel really fulfilled. And strangely enough, when we were doing IVF, and we're still doing IVF, we're going to do an update video about that, I guess tomorrow. But when I went to get do my first retrieval, I was really scared because it was the first time that I had ever gone under. And, I was in a lot of pain by that point. And I just remember, and I talked about this in our video, I just remember, and I'm getting a little emotional about it, just feeling so grateful that there were those people who loved, at least seemed to thoroughly enjoy the work that they were doing. And IVF is expensive. And I felt like it was so worth it to compensate those people in a way that they deserve to be compensated because they were there supporting me at a very difficult moment. And so, I just don't like vilifying the 9 to 5 because there are people out there doing amazing work. And to try to say that there's something less than about doing work that you love is problematic. Okay, Joseph, talk. It's so awkward now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and so I completely agree because the 9 to 5ers, scientists creating
9 to 5er right here.
Yeah, but tons of work, tons of valuable work is done in a traditional setting, and that kind of that brings up one of my other issues with it. Generally, it's that somebody has to be doing this work, and so to say that it's terrible if you're working, it's like, well, somebody has to work.
But the one thing that does excite me, so to turn this around, because I think we went far to one side, and we're definitely not far to one side. We're definitely very balanced, as we kind of are in just about everything. I love that there are people that can say, okay, I just want this much money and I'm good. And then I'm going to leave the workforce, right? Because the reality is that, the fewer workers there are, the more, and the employers still need workers, the higher wages get. So that's a really great positive aspect of FIRE, to kind of reduce the workforce and increase wages for the people who are left behind, which maybe will then help the rest of us also enjoy our jobs more because compensation's going up.
So that is very true. As people do leave the workforce, as long as they're actually leaving the workforce, then that's true. Then that is one of the benefits. Now, so I'm going to flip it a little bit differently. So as everybody is saving and investing, the returns that we're getting in the market are really dependent on how the stock market increases or decreases in price. So whatever value the work that all these companies are doing in aggregate, how that value fluctuates, affects our returns. And as we invest more money, then we also bid up the price of all those stocks. And so they're going to continue to produce as much as they can, as fast as they can, and give you the most profits, regardless of their stock price. But as we bid it up, that means that the returns that we're getting are actually going to be lower over time. And so the more people that save faster and faster, it's good individually, but then in aggregate, our overall returns actually might go down. And then that means you have to save even more money to reach those nest egg goals.
And then to add on to that, when people don't buy things, our economy doesn't do as well. So that's the other thing to consider. So the FIRE people actually they depend on people like us who are consumers, who actually make a conscious choice not to exit the market, but to save and also to consume. So it's actually a great synergy between the FIRE people need us and we need them to exit the market so we can all make more money too. So I think there's a great synergy there. But in terms of just to wrap this all up, why we specifically chose not to FIRE, because we did think about it. And at one point we were going to do it. And we just decided we actually like spending more money. We like having nice things. We like the impact of that our goals will allow us to have on the world, because our goal is to grow our business to not just multiple 7, but multiple 8-figure business, so that we can employ people who are making amazing salaries with amazing benefits, that we can spread our positive and happy message, and that we can do philanthropic works both here in the United States and around the world. We want to have a big impact. And the way that you have a big impact is, frankly, with a lot of money.
Yeah, I was just going to add one more thing, that I would love to see a big movement, not so much with the FIRE being retire early, but kind of, financially independent. And I couldn't think of a really good acronym on the spot, but something about creating a business or creating jobs. So you become financially independent and then kind of pay it forward by creating jobs or creating whatever it is you felt was missing in the world or the workplace, which is why you wanted to leave it. And instead of just leaving it, creating it, because now you're financially independent, you can do that. And so I'd really like to see that kind of a movement going on.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point about the financial independence part. We are all about financial independence, but what we would like to see you do is create a balanced and happy life along the way to achieving financial independence. You do not have to wait to be happy, to live your life, to feel full and empowered and like loving every day. You don't have to wait for financial independence for that to happen. You don't have to wait for debt freedom for that to happen. You can choose to live your life in alignment right now. It just means you have to make different choices about the things that you don't like leaving your job, like moving to a different city or a different country, all that.
Okay, so that'll wrap it up, and we'll just see how many comments or questions you have about the FIRE movement, what you think about it, are you in it? And we imagine that we will have to readdress some of this in a future video, which we are more than happy to do, because anytime anyone has made videos or interviews recently about this topic, it's been a conversation starter, to say the least.
Firestorm. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.